We have a quorum now. And so we have two bills. The first one is a new bill before the committee, Senate Bill 2333. And I'm going to recognize Senator Boyd to go ahead and explain that bill.
This bill was a bill, I'll just be candid, the House was going to take this up and they had some issues, so they notified us yesterday and asked us to look at this. So it is of something of interest to both parties. And I'm going to ask in just a second I'm going to ask for an amendment and ask for a reverse repealer and ask for subject to appropriation. But let me tell you just a little bit about this bill. We have, this is brought to us by the Epilepsy Foundation. We have children across the state with epilepsy, and the figures are much higher than I realized. There is limited to no training in many of our school districts to help these children when they have a seizure. This puts in some very basic requirements that would have school districts make sure that there's somebody kind of on staff that knows when a child has a seizure, how to help them administer medicine, and really just kind of comply with it. We're going to put a reverse repealer in here too, because we're going to talk to the Department of Education because they do some wonderful online trainings that would be of limited cost to school districts to make sure that schools could implement this effectively. And this would simply put some requirements in there for the school districts to have somebody who has some knowledge of this. One of the things too that's real important too is this has been brought up before, that if a child has an IEP, a 504 or something like that, that you could put those training requirements in there. But many times, and actually happened in both of my children's schools, children don't know that they have epilepsy. And they will, and it's not just children, teachers can have it too. And it can come upon them at any age, and they can have a seizure and not know how to respond. It happened in my daughter's classroom with somebody, and she actually had a little experience because of her, just some little bit of knowledge she had with a family member on epilepsy. So what can happen, and this is very important that somebody reacts, they react very quickly and know what to do in this instance. So this will put this very simple training in place, and we're going to work to strengthen this bill as it goes through the process. I would hope if y'all would be amenable to this today, to where we can make sure that this is a good process for students and make sure that all of our school districts have just some very basic training on what it is if a child was to have a seizure or a faculty member.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Boyd. So your first amendment is to insert a reverse repealer.
It's to insert a reverse repealer. And then I would like to make one motion. We're going to strike out lines 40 through 44. This would require the school districts to have a certain piece of equipment that we don't think is quite necessary that they have. The Epilepsy Foundation has been amenable, I think, to that. And so I would ask that we strike out lines 40 through 44, that we insert a reverse repealer, and that we insert a line subject to appropriation.
Okay. So you've heard the amendment by Senator Boyd. It has three parts to it. Everybody understand the amendment? Anybody have questions on the amendment? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Senator Boyd.
I'll be happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
Senator Jordan. Senator Jordan, we can't hear you. We need the microphone.
Thank you. Though they have, isn't there sufficient medication for epilepsy?
Yes, sir. There is sufficient medication for epilepsy, but in some instances, we want to make sure that people know how to administer that medication. But what happens oftentimes is somebody doesn't know they have epilepsy and they have a seizure. And so this would make sure that the school districts, when they have that happen, they know how just to respond appropriately in those instances.
May I say this? I had a student that would have epilepsy every time I had a test. And I found out it was fake. And so I was thinking that at this time, there were adequate medication for this this disease. what would you want you want other students to,
No, sir, this would just be for school personnel, that there would be somebody in the building that knows how to respond and how to appropriately respond, because not all of our school districts have school nurses. And so that there's just somebody designated within that school building that knows how to respond to a child that has a seizure. This is, it is not uncommon for a child never to have had a seizure before and truly have a true seizure and develop epilepsy. That is not something that's uncommon at all. So this would be in those situations. It's kind of a preventative thing if somebody would have one. But again, Senator Jordan, it's not just students. It could be teachers as well.
I understand the disorder, but I thought that at this time, there was adequate medication that a student would be taking that had this disease.
And students' medications, as they grow, unfortunately, I know a little bit too much about this because of some family issues. As students grow, those medications can change. They can be dynamic, especially during puberty. Those medications may all of a sudden not be sufficient and have to be changed. So this is just really that preventative tool, making sure there's somebody in the building that knows how to appropriately respond.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jordan.
Senator
Any
Barr.
further questions for Senator Boyd?
Chairman.
Senator Mann?
I think I might want to offer a technical amendment on line 34. If you read, it says, starting on line 31, that the local school board of each public school district and the governing body of each non-public school district shall have at least one school employee. And after employee, insert the words or vendor at each school who has met the training requirements, because sometimes private schools contract with medical personnel. So I would like it to say, my amendment would be on line 34, after employee, to insert or vendor.
You've heard the amendment. Any questions for Senator McMahon? Senator Boyd, do you want to comment on that?
That's a friendly amendment.
Okay. All right, ready to vote? All in favor of the amendment, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're back on the committee substitute. Senator Boyd?
Mr. Chairman, I would move title sufficient due pass committees as amended,
Committee sub?
committee sub.
Okay, you've heard the motion, title sufficient due pass committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The second bill we'll be taking up is Senate Bill 2367, the committee substitute. The Appropriations Committee met and made two changes to the committee sub. The first was to add a reverse repealer. And second, the Appropriations Committee was not fully committed on making this a grant program. And so they reverted back to the loan payment language. That doesn't mean the grant program won't come out. It's just, we're still a work in progress, and I'll be working with Senator Hobson as we go forward. So that's the explanation of the committee sub. Anybody have any questions for me on that? Senator Boyd, do you have a motion?
Motion, title sufficient due pass committee substitute.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Senator Boyd, motions rise and report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?